And good evening and welcome to City Focus. I'm Marty Olsen, your host, and I'd like to welcome back to the program Adam Goss, who's the head baseball coach at St. Joseph's University in West Hartford. And Coach, thanks for coming back.
It's great to be back.
You were a terrific guest when I had you on a handful of months ago before your season. Now we're in the off season, where school's opening up. I said, well, it's a good time to bring you back and we can kind of check in with you and how your season went. And did you meet your objectives and what are your goals for the upcoming season? And I think there'll be plenty to talk about because you kicked off kind of an inaugural full-time season.
Yeah, let's do it. First year was mild success. I've been joking. I appreciate when people say you had a great first year. I'm also sick of hearing it because my expectations are always going to be higher. Then we made the conference tournament and got a win in the first round, but our goal is to win it and we didn't. So moving forward into this season, we were talking before the program, we bring a lot of guys back and our goal is going to be to win the conference championship until we do that. So that's where we're starting.
Yeah, well, I mean, for an initial season, as I recall, I'm not sure if your facility was ready at the beginning of last season, or had they put it on overdrive and get it ready for you? Because I know you were excited about that.
Oh yeah, so I believe when I was here last, the field wasn't done yet. I forget where we were in the process, but so it ended up we got a little delayed last fall, but we were able to finish the fall season on the field, which was really cool. We played our Fall World Series out there. Beautiful. We're so blessed with what we got. Artificial turf surface, so dirt mound, just a really, really nice facility. So finished the fall out there, and then wasn't very snowy winter, so we were able to get out there basically from the start in mid-January for practice, and then we played our whole spring season out there. So it was a good season to play out there.
Yeah. Well, let's just take a little bit of a review of last year.
Yeah.
In just researching, you finished at 17, 22, and 1.
Oh, that one hurts. That one hurt. That one at the end hurts. The tie.
Well, I mean, your squad was young. You had primarily freshmen and a few sophomores and even fewer juniors. I mean, you were a very, very young squad, brand spanking new in a new conference, a great Northeast Athletic Conference. Mm-hmm. And a lot of teams, including locally Mitchell College, who has had a significant amount of success in the last number of years under Travis Buselek.
Yep.
So you were stepping into a highly competitive environment.
Yeah, it was a good league. Still is. Mitchell's going to be right there again this year. Johnson Wales is going to be right there again this year. But last year, floated right around 500. Took our licks. Mitchell came up to our place and they beat us up pretty good. But there were games early on in the year. You're right. We played a lot of young players, and that's our model. We're not going to bring in a ton of transfers every year. We're gonna rely on our young players that we develop over a period of time. Last year we did have some really good transfers that we did rely on, and we bring some of them back this year, and we're excited about them. But some of those freshmen early on in the season last year took their licks, but you got to get the experience somehow, some way. And by the end of the year, we were winning games, in late April and May that we were not, even close to winning in February and March. So that's, for me, when you look back on year one, that's the success. Isn't necessarily the win-loss records, relatively respectable and making the tournaments respectable, but the experience gained for the young players that are all returning this year, that's the success from last year. And now, I mentioned it before, we have to make a jump. Being around 500 and winning a game in the tournament isn't going to be good enough. So excited to see what those young guys do from their year one to year two.
Well, this is an opportunity for you too to see growth and push your youngsters and to make them better ball players.
Yeah, for sure. And they're buying in. I mean, they're working hard already. They moved in last weekend. They've already been, working out. They get up Tuesday, Thursday morning at 6 a.m. and they go out with our strength coach and they're working out with him. So they're working hard on their own before we start with them next week. So we're excited about
Are
the
there
buy-in
any, are there
level.
any rules regarding formal practices at your level?
Yep.
I mean, I know at high school they've got, it appears to be very rigid rules from season to season and sport to sport.
Yeah, so the NCAA, I mean, it's kind of just a blanket rule. So in the fall, we're allowed 24 practice dates. One of those dates can be like an out-of-team competition. So like this year, UConn Avery Point is coming up for a doubleheader at the end of the fall, which will be awesome. Connor Lewis, one of my good friends, is the head coach over there. But in terms of practice, we're only allowed 24 of them. So like everything up to this point is like not mandatory. Like I don't know who's there. I can't watch them until we start our official practice starting next Tuesday. So those days there's no like hour restrictions. I mean, they have to go to class obviously, so we're not practicing 24 hours a day, but on a practice day, we can do and observe as a coaching staff, we can observe, strength and conditioning and obviously baseball practice too. So we'll practice 4 days a week for 6 weeks and then send them off and get them ready over the off season.
Now, listening to that, is it possible for a student athlete in today's day and age to play two sports?
Yeah, it is. I've actually when I was the assistant at Nichols, we had a football player, baseball player. So he would just miss fall ball, which isn't the best for us, but it's not like he's just sitting on the couch playing video games. He's working out and playing football. So it is possible. And at the D3 level, with those restrictions, only being able to practice 24 times in your non-traditional season, it kind of frees you up. Obviously, it frees you up to focus on school, which I think is the point. But it also frees you up to play multiple sports. It is tough, playing. If you were to play like basketball and baseball, those seasons, winter and spring, they clash more than a fall and spring sport would. But it is possible to manage.
That's interesting, and sometimes it's been argued that the athletes benefit from utilizing different skills and muscles and playing different sports as opposed to just honing in on a sport. But they have to make some decisions, I guess.
Yeah, and in the recruiting process, we do like to multi-sport athletes, because I mean in baseball and really every sport, but there's so many different parts of your body that you need to use in baseball, whether you're fielding, running the bases, pitching. So the more different sports you play, you're activating different muscle groups, and it's you're conditioning your body to do a bunch of different things, which is required in baseball. So through the recruiting process, that's definitely, we love multi-sport athletes, football players, basketball players, and obviously baseball players.
Now, when I contacted you to set up this interview tonight, you had indicated that you were available on a couple of different dates and you were recruiting.
Yep.
And what interests me is, is recruiting now done for the season, or are you recruiting all the time? And are you looking at like Legion or high school or AAU squads? What are you doing when you're recruiting? Are you on the road or watching a lot of video?
So all of the above, I guess I could say. Answer the first question, we're never done recruiting. So like this year, we're bringing in 8 players in the 25 class, so for next fall. So right now we have 4 verbal commits. So when we hit our number, so when we get our 8 commits, we're looking for some pitchers still. We'll close the book on the 25 class, but once we stop the 25 class, we're working on the 26 class. So it never really ends. The process, it's very involved. I mean, we work, myself and my assistants, we work really, really hard. We travel, I was in Florida, upstate New York, we go into New Jersey. We're all over the East Coast from the time our season ends till the time we start up again in the fall. The summer months actually are our busiest months, like in my opinion. We're putting in easily 50, 60-hour weeks during the recruiting season, trying to find the next, great Blue Jays. So recruiting it's an ever-changing environment, right? With the transfer portal now and what's going on, at the Division I level with the potential of 34 scholarships, which is a crazy concept.
And there's no scholarships at your level.
No
correct?
scholarships at our level. But what happens at the upper levels, there's a trickle-down effect all the way, through to the Division II level and then the Division III level. So we never stop. We never stop trying to find guys that fit our program on the field, and we have really good human beings in our program. I was leaving today, walking out to come here out of the office, and one of our administrators, they had a compliance meeting today with our athletic directors, and I'm walking out of the office, and our associate athletic director looked me in the eye and said, "Your guys are the best," and that means the world to me, right? Like they're talented baseball players. If they weren't talented baseball players, I would like to think that we wouldn't have recruited them. So obviously they check that box, but what means the world to me is how they operate as human beings on campus. So to hear that from a person of that has some power on campus, that's how they represent themselves. That I just
Good
smiled.
young men, good students.
Yes, absolutely, and that's what it's all about for me.
Now, as student athletes, are they receiving, or is there a mandatory level of academic support, or are these young men pretty good students when they enter and they're able to kind of operate on their own without that guiding hand, for lack of better words?
Again, all the above, honestly. I want guys that can come in and be men and take care of their business, and we want good students coming into our program, that represented themselves well in the classroom in high school. That's important to me. With that being said, though, the transition to college, especially as freshmen, like that's the first really big step in their lives. So, I've had guys that are 4.0 students that aren't necessarily, they get off to a rough start in college, right? All the extra freedom, away from mom and dad. You have to do your own laundry. There's not dinner waiting for you on the table every night, right? So there's an adjustment period, and we have to be ready and prepared to support them.
I think one of the biggest adjustments for the young folks, period, athletes or not, is that there's an illusion, and I think that's a good word, is an illusion that you've got an abundance of free time. Because you're only in class like 15 hours a week.
Yep.
Time to raise hell.
Yep.
And that's the time when you're actually supposed to go to the library and do your homework and your papers and prepare for class so that you'll be on top of your game. And so you've got to kind of get into time management.
Yep.
Which when you're in high school, things are pretty structured. You
gotta
get
schedule.
up and you get on the bus, you go to school, you do your class, you do your after school or athletic activities, you go home, dinner, homework, repeat.
Yep.
And mix in some games in between if you're an athlete.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, no, we map out our guys' days for them. So obviously they have their class schedule and they're taking a lot of morning classes, and then we have our lift sessions with our strength coach. We have individual sessions kind of like pitching, hitting lessons with our coaching staff, and then we have practice in the afternoon. So we really kind of regiment them and fill out their daily schedule for them to help with that transition. And I've had guys tell me that they just don't have time to do homework, and I love to sit them down in my office, and I got a big whiteboard, and I'll just start doing the math. I'll start with the 24 hours you have in a day and go all the way through and taking out their hours that they're in class and eating and practice, and then they really realize that even after sleeping and going to class and going to practice, they still have an incredible amount of time that they might be wasting on the Xbox or the PlayStation or on their phone that could be better used in other areas. So time management, definitely a skill you need to excel in college.
Well, it's part of college.
For sure.
Now, when you're on the recruiting trail, do you find that you and as the other schools in your conference, you're competing for the same kids, or not necessarily so, that you might find a nugget over here that's kind of nobody's found yet? Or does everybody know that Joe Smith is over there at such and such a high school and Western Connecticut or wherever, that that's somebody you'd like on your squad?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you have to do to kind of convince somebody that St. Joe's is the best choice?
Yeah, so it's impossible. It's really hard. I'm not going to say it's impossible. It's really hard to find a guy that you're the only school that's ever seen him play. And the day and age of social media, and guys can put videos up, and hundreds and thousands of coaches can see them with a click of a button. So we're constantly competing against schools, obviously like the Easterns and the Mitchells, and all the there's so many Division III and so many colleges in general in the Northeast region. We're constantly competing against a lot of the same schools. I don't like to do a lot of convincing in that way. Like I talk to them about what we have to offer and what my priorities are, as for them as players, but also as men. And if it's not a fit for them, it's not a fit for them, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're trying to oversell a guy on your university and on your program, they come in as a freshman, they don't like it, they jump in the transfer portal, and then they end up going wherever they want anyway. And retention is really important to me, like getting guys in and having them for 4 years and seeing them graduate and then continuing that relationship on really throughout the rest of their lives is important to me. So, I'm very open and honest about how I'm going to coach them and what my expectation is of them when they get there. And if that's something that they, think matches well with who they are as a player and a person, then I want them, and I think we'll, end up getting that guy. But if I'm going to, sit there and feel like I need to be a car salesman, that's probably not going to be the best fit for us as a program.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Being local, I do follow Mitchell a little bit. I went there, and I know I knew Travis, and I know Todd Peretz and other folks that are down there at the school, and I've also with Roger Bidwell over at Avery Point, who's kind of iconic in the region and beyond.
For sure.
And they've given me a lot of insight into what's going on here in our region in southeastern Connecticut, and you're up in the Hartford area, and whether or not baseball is a big deal up there in your immediate area, if you're able to recruit and get any of the local talent, or is there local talent in the greater Hartford area?
I think, generally speaking, and I'll get into the regions of the state, I think Connecticut is the best high school or best baseball state in New England, and I don't think it's close. Like I watch a lot of Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, everywhere. We got two freshmen from Vermont on our team now. Like we go all over New England. I think Connecticut's the best, and I think personally, in terms of, there's really 3 hubs in terms of like talent in Connecticut. Southeast corner, where we are right now, that's one of them, no doubt. The ECC is really good baseball. The greater Hartford area, right? You have Southington and all those bigger schools in that area, and then you have the FCAC down in Fairfield County, which is all the prep schools, Fairfield Prep, Fairfield Ward. All those schools are really, really deep and talented too. So we go to all 3 really. We have guys from Fairfield. We have Southington starting catcher from last year is on our team now. He's a freshman. We have a couple Waterford guys. We got bunch of ECC guys, Fitch, Killingly. So we're all over really those 3 areas in the state, pretty hard, and we do pretty well in all 3 areas.
Now, do you find the young men that make their way toward your program, do they have G3 on the mind when they're in high school, that this is the level that they feel comfortable that they're going to compete at? Or do you find that you've got the guys that have dreams of being at LSU or Texas, and they kind of trickle down, and from Division I to Division I, below a cut, the top cut, to Division II to Division III? Where's that comfort zone? I mean, not everybody's going to be the next Ohtani.
There's only one Shohei. I'd say baseball is very unique, and like that margin is so razor thin. Obviously, like LSU and the SEC schools compared to really everybody else, regardless of division, is just a different animal. We were talking about Paul Skeens before. He went from LSU to being one of the best pitchers in the big leagues in like a year and a half. So different animal there. But the margin really from even like mid-major Division I to upper level Division III, mid-level Division III, it's razor thin. Look at UConn's had some they've gone to 2 super regionals in 3 years, and a lot of their best players, were Division III guys when they started. So, for us, I think we do a pretty good job evaluating, guys that are going to be really good Division III players, and that's kind of their avenue. We'll lose guys to low-level Division I's and Division II programs quite often. Lost a guy to a Division II school this past week in the recruiting process, but it's all the same. Like, we're going after the same guys. We lose guys to Central all the time.
And they made the tournament a couple of years
Yeah,
ago.
and that's a really good program. And that just kind of shows you, like, how razor thin that margin is, right? Like, we have a guy on campus and then he goes to Central and he plays there. Like, that kind of tells you, if they're going to Central but they're still interested in a Division III school, it's, if you're not on that guy, you're missing out, because you only takes 1 or 2 of those guys that are right on the cusp of going to the Division I level to pick USJ, and those guys could be game changers for your program. So, we shoot for those really high level, Division III, borderline Division I guys, and then if we don't get them, we keep on, plucking away. And really, it's about accumulating depth in, like, your list of, your recruiting class.
Do you get guys who may look at your program at they may be good enough to play at, let's say, Central, but there's a guy ahead of them. So they decide, well, I'm going to play for you for a year, knowing that guy's graduating and he may move to Central the next year. I mean, I would think that kind of a thought process may go into a player, or
especially now with the transfer portal.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a lot easier to move these days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think every coach can have their own opinion. For me, not to say that everybody else is going to be a junior college, right? Like, where if you're not a Division I school, you're a JUCO for the Division I level. But I think it's closed-minded for me to have a family sit in front of me and say, the example I always use is, if you come here and you develop and Jim Penders calls me and wants you to move up to UConn, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, no, don't go. Right, because that tells me that we're doing a good job developing you and getting you better. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty common, right? Like, guys going Division III. I don't necessarily know if that's always in their plan. Like, I'm going to go Division III for a year and then, move right up, because Division III baseball is no joke, right? Like, there's no guarantee that a really good high school player is going to go and excel right away at the Division III level. And those Division I coaches aren't taking you if you're not an all-conference guy or better. So,
I've noticed that. I mean, D3 athletics in general, not just baseball, but basketball and across the board. I mean, the skill levels and competition are keen. I mean, I watch Coast Guard and Con and Mitchell and the teams that they're playing. And it's really kind of gives you a wow factor.
Yeah, I think I think you're 100% right. And I think there's a misconception that's quickly kind of eradicating itself, where, people think of, years ago, people think of, like, Division III as like a club, almost like a club sport. It's not. It's getting far and farther and farther and farther and farther away from that. Not everybody can play Division III athletics, and the programs that recruit really hard and work really hard, it's not easy to play there, because there's a lot of good players that you're competing against, on that roster. So, yeah, it's at the talent level at every level of college athletics. NAIA is, like, obviously it's not very prevalent in the Northeast, but that's a really high level. It's not the NCAA, but it's college athletics, and it's really, really good. So the talent level across the board's increasing rapidly.
Yeah, I had a number of months ago Tim Murphy, the head basketball coach at Con, sitting where you are. And he was mentioning that he had a couple of guys that had seniors, and they were doing a 5th year, moving up to D1. So, I mean, so for those folks who look at Con and look at them as kind of being second rate, I think that they are misguided and misjudging the talent level.
For sure. And I think, not necessarily, it's not always someone that I'm recruiting, but I'll have people ask me, like, just for recruiting advice. Like, generally speaking, like, I'm new to this, I might not have an older sibling that played college athletics, like, what should I do? Number one for me is go where you're wanted, like, regardless of division, because if you go there and your coaches care about you and they care to develop you, you could be in that situation where, your last year, you're moving up to, wherever Division I program here, Division I program there. But if, you're going somewhere where you're just another guy, just another number to fill out the roster, you're probably not going to develop as well. So regardless of Division I, II, or III, going where you're wanted, where the coaches are going to be invested in you, that's the most important thing for me, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, this past season you finished at 8-8 in your conference, which 500, but it got you into your league tournament.
Yep.
And as we noted earlier, you didn't get a chance to see you play. I didn't understand how it worked, but there were 2 pods, they called it.
Yep.
Mitchell was in one, and then they played at home.
Yep.
And
Johnson and Wales was the host of our pod.
Yeah, were they the top seeds? Is that how that?
Yeah, 1 and 2 seed. Yep.
So if you were to become a 1 or 2 seed, you'd host a pod that particular season.
Yep. Yeah, so it's 2 pods of 4, double elimination, and then the winner of each double elimination pod plays a best of 3 game series against each other to determine the conference champion. We won the first game. We played the 3. So we were the 6 seed. We played the 3 seed, LaSalle, and we beat them in the first round. And then we just ran into Norwich. Had a buzzsaw lefty, just really, really good. Mid to upper 80s lefty, and southpaws aren't always easy to hit. And he had a really good changeup and was on that day. And we lost 5-1, I believe the score was. And then so that was our first loss. And then we had to beat Johnson and Wales, who was the host team. They were going through the losers bracket, and we were up 3-1 on them in the 6th inning with the bases loaded. And it's a sensitive subject, but bases loaded, pop fly, ball got caught in the lights. It was twilight. Center fielder lost it. It was an inside the park grand slam, and it was tough. That was a tough momentum swing to come back from. That was kind of it, but. 1 or 2 things go another way. Like, I honestly think we were right there, and that's what makes me excited for this year, right? Like, we lose Luke Fox, who was a second-team all-conference pitcher for us. He was a Division I transfer. He was a grad student, one of the guys we were talking about. But we're bringing basically everybody back with all of that experience. All these guys played a lot last year, and I think we're gonna be all right.
Now, you're in a league with 13 schools, I believe.
Yep.
That's a pretty big conference.
Yeah, there's actually more. So there's a couple
more
schools. Yeah,
but
13 baseball.
Play baseball.
13 baseball. Yep.
And pretty level competition, or is there a disparity between top to bottom?
It's
significant disparity.
It's pretty good. I mean, even so, like the team we lost to in our first loss in the playoffs, Norwich, they were the 8th seed, and they were rolling out a lefty that was mid to upper 80s. So there's no guaranteed win in the league. There's a lot of good coaches. We got a lot of young coaches that are really hungry to be good, and recruiting really hard, and are really invested in their program. So it's a good league, and obviously with Mitchell and Colby Sawyer had a great year last year. It's a good league, a lot of good players.
Well, I enjoy it. I prefer a little bit when it's. I'm not too keen on it when it's in the 30s or 40s, nice. But I like a little
wind
bit warmer.
Coming off the water.
But I enjoy watching, Mitchell and Coast Guard, mm-hmm. and I'm looking forward to seeing your program. Now, do you, with this odd number of schools, how does your schedule work out? I mean, 16, you're not playing everybody twice, because that would be 24 games.
Yep. Yeah, so this funny you should ask. So we went round and round and round basically all of last summer, because we added Mitchell and we added us to the league. So it was trying to figure out what the dynamic was going to be there. So basically, there's 3 pods. You play everybody in your pod during the season. You play everybody in your pod twice, and then you play everybody else out of your pod once. So that's how we get to the 16 conference games. So in our pod, it's Mitchell, Albertus Magnus, drawing blanks here. There's 4 of us. So we play, those teams twice, and then we play everybody else once. So John Raiola, that's Elms College. They're in our pod too. John Raiola, he made the schedule. Really smart guy. So he just kind of sorted through that to figure out what the best way is. And Johnson and Wales is leaving us, so we're gonna not this season, after next year, I believe.
Really?
So now we're gonna have to reconfigure the whole thing all over again. But at least for this year, and obviously for last year, that was the format.
Okay. Any idea why they're leaving?
They're going to the former Commonwealth Coast Conference. Now it's the Cone Conference of New England, with like Nichols, Roger Williams, Western New England, schools like that. It's Curry College, so not sure why.
Interesting. Well, shuffle the deck and you play the team on your schedule, as they say.
That's it. Doesn't matter who's in the other uniform, just go play them and try to beat them.
And how much of a role do you play in determining your schedule, especially your out-of-conference schedule?
Yeah, it's fun. I get free reign, basically, and try to keep it so it's like 50-50, home games, away games. But yeah, it's fun. Planning the Florida trip, too. This year we're playing 8 games in Orlando. Last year we played 7 down there. Planning that trip, it's pretty involved, but it's a good time. And then, trying to find good conference opponents that, I think we match up, not only that we match up well against, but are a good challenge for us early in the year to try to get us ready for conference play. Yeah. It's a good time.
You mentioned the Florida. You beat me to the punch, because I was going to inquire about whether you did a Florida trip, number one. And obviously the answer is yes. Now, is this something that is part of your baseball team's budget, or do you have to outside fundraise to make this happen?
Both. The school, they do a good job. They take care of us. But, a lot of it we do have to fundraise. The guys had to pay for it too. We make a travel roster for it, so obviously not everybody goes, but the guys that do go have to pay. I think last year they paid $250, which is pretty good for a flight to Florida, and for a week you get food, condos, everything. But we work like UConn basketball games. We work concession stands there. We do a crowdfunding campaign where we kind of send out emails with updates about the program and ask for donations that way. So we do a little bit of both. The university does, they're behind us, but we, at the Division III level, and really at most levels, unless you're a power, a high level Division I program, fundraising is a big part of it too. If you want to, do all the things that you want to do in a season. So do a little bit of everything.
Now, do you try to schedule anybody that's up a level, a D2 or a D1 school, anywhere in your schedule?
It's never been something I thought about. We could do it, especially like in the fall. That's something when I was at Franklin Pierce, we'd play at the University of Hartford in the fall. One year we went to Harvard, so it's something we could do. Never really thought of it though, to be honest with you. And this year we're excited having UConn Avery Point come down. Obviously the local tie, being from the area, and
they've had a high degree of success,
really
Avery Point, for an extended period of time.
Really good. And my like I said, one of my best buddies is the head guy there, and he's doing a great job. We keep losing out on recruits to him, so if I'm getting a little annoyed, it's time for him to get a job somewhere else, I think. But no, he's doing a really good job there, and I think they were like a win or two away from the World Series last year. So the beat goes on for the Pointers too. But for us, playing them in the fall, it's obviously good competition and a good competitive game. But also from a recruiting standpoint, get a look at some of their sophomores and even some of their freshmen that we might have interest in to get for their junior, senior seasons too. So it's a win-win on all fronts.
Yeah. Now, does your new facility have lights?
Does not.
Does not. Is there any reason why?
Couple. I didn't really push hard for it. First off, the softball field, which is like right down the hill from our field, doesn't have them. So for just to keep it consistent from baseball to softball, they didn't want to do it, which I fully understand. Also, we have a neighborhood right beyond left field, and talking about the field getting delayed and a little bit last year, they were trying to fast track it as quickly as they could. And we didn't want neighbors complaining about going to town meetings and stopping us from getting approval because of the lights. We don't want that to be the stopping force that prevented us from being able to play on it this past spring. So that was really the biggest thing. And also, you talked about the temperature in college baseball season. Once that sun goes down, it's not always the most conducive weather environment for baseball games too. Once it gets chilly when the sun goes down, so.
I didn't know if it was anything would have any bearing on recruiting, whether the kids like to play under the lights or if it's irrelevant, they just want to play.
I think once they walk up the hill and see the field we have, I don't think they think too much about it. I get asked it, but it's not that really that big of a deal for us. The only time, like obviously, if, to allow other teams to use it on our practice days, like if soccer wants to go out there and kick the ball around, obviously that kind of prevents it because a lot of times, especially later in the fall, we go right until dark. And the other thing too is when you have lights, people that rent the field, they can rent it for 15 hours a day if they want to. And I don't necessarily love that idea. I want to keep that thing looking good as possible for as long as possible. So there's pros and cons, but we're very happy with what we got.
Are the facilities within your conference of the different schools, are they relatively comparable, or are they some rather large margins in between the top facilities and less so?
I would say, thinking back to all of our conference games this year, you think about obviously Mitchell is very similar to our field, beautiful turf field. Like Riviere up in Nashua, they play in a minor league stadium. Johnson and Wales, I mean, their field's name is the Scott's Miracle Grow Field. It's like Scott's literally sponsors it and takes care of it, so it's a beautiful grass field. I can't really think back, like Colby Sawyer up in New Hampshire, like that's a nice field too. We're pretty lucky. Like there's really no bad surfaces that we play on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the quality of the facilities has a bearing in terms of a player deciding on where to go. That who cares? I mean, before Mitchell rehabbed their facility, I mean, it was pretty tough.
Yeah, I think
to be very blunt.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a double-edged sword. Like obviously, it's a huge recruiting tool. Like to bring walk a family up the hill and show them this beautiful, I think it was like $3.8 million facility. It's a huge recruiting tool. On the flip side, you talk about Travis over at Mitchell. I mean, they practice in a parking lot during the winter, and they
down at Ocean Beach,
and they were winning conference championships doing that. So is it everything? Absolutely not. Like you can win without it. Is it a huge bonus, and does it really make it easier for our guys to get work in on their own? Absolutely. But there's also some sort of like gritty factor too of guys that just want to play baseball regardless of the facility they're playing on. That's a huge component of it too. So we're blessed with what we have, and I go out of my way to make sure, it's a turf field, but we maintain it every day just to make sure that our guys are taking pride in it, and they don't just assume that that's a normal thing, right? Like to show up and
granted.
Never taking it for granted. We spend 20 minutes on it every day after practice, just making sure it's ready to go for the next day. So that's the type of kid that I want to have.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would think that one of your current objectives as you move into season 2 is that you'd like to be conference champ. That would be an important consideration, get that number 1 seed, and then move into the next level, representing your conference in the NCAA tournament.
Absolutely. And for me, that's the goal right now, because we haven't done it yet. And then from there, we're just going to keep moving the goalpost. We win a conference championship, then it's going to be we want to win a regional. And then we win a regional, and then we're going to want to win a super regional and continuously move to improve. If we win a conference championship every single year, that would be fantastic. But you do that for 10 years in a row, you're going to get sick of it, right? You're going to want to continue to get better and go farther and until you win a national championship, right? Like the goal of building a program from where we started to where we're going, until you win the national championship, you haven't been successful yet. So 100%, like that, we can't look too far ahead. Like what's right in front of us is, really what's right in front of us is having a good practice on, Tuesday, September 10th, and then going from there. But with the eye on the goal of winning a conference championship, that's where we're at. The guys talk about it all the time. Like every time, we're having conversations, captains meetings every Monday. It's a part of our conversation. Once we do it though, it's going to be what's next.
Now, do your guys wrap their head around, like, last year Mitchell wins the league. Johnson and Wales is second, correct?
Yep.
So there's a handful of teams above you. Do they look at those teams and say, where they kind of can visualize what they need to do to get better, to be there?
Absolutely. And I think talking about like the experience and the success of the first year, the success being the experience, I think the little run we went on at the end of the year, like there was no guarantee we were making the playoffs. Even going into the last week, like we had to going into our last conference series, I think there was 3 or 4 teams tied, and 2 of them were going to get into the playoffs, and we had to win a conference game, which is never easy to get in, and then going into the playoffs and winning, upsetting the 3 seed and doing it in a pretty dominant way. I think they saw how good we can be, and then when we lose, the next night, I think they saw what led to that happening. So I think it's motivating in the way that you see that we're closer than a lot of people thought we were going to be in the first year, but there's also some things that we need to do to improve. So as a coach, it's easy for me. It's easy to motivate them, right? Like it's not like we went in there and we were the 13 seed and we have this long road to go. We were right there. We just need to pay a little bit more attention to detail and develop in some ways. And I think we're going to be. We have a chance to be right there in the end.
Yeah, I mentioned to you before we came on the air that I went up to Babson for the NCAA tournament to watch Mitchell play Salisbury in their first game, and the Mitchell kid pitched a one-hitter. he was dominant, and Mitchell won that game. And Salisbury, I guess, had been has been in the national scene for an extended period of time, into the World Series.
Yep. I believe that was who Eastern actually beat in the national championship when they won more recently. Yeah,
and I was going to mention that too. That here we've got a school here in Eastern Connecticut that has won a national title.
Yep.
So that's pretty heady stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of the times we're sitting right next to, the coaching staff at Mitchell and the coaching staff at Eastern at these recruiting events, and recruiting the same players that they are, and hoping we're going to land one of them when we go up against those guys. But yeah, no, I think it's motivating for our guys too to see, like, not only in our region you have some really, really talented baseball programs, but also on our campus. If you look at going back to the history of USJ being co-ed just 6 years ago, and then looking at our other men's teams that are also really new and seeing how successful they've been. We talked a little bit about our basketball program before going on air. They're obviously very, very good, and they've been on the national scene. Our lacrosse team just won the conference championship this spring, and they went down and played Salisbury in the second round. And then, the number 1 team in the country. They've won 14 national championships. They didn't beat them, but to see them win a regional game, I think our guys can look around and feel like they belong and that they can do the same sorts of things.
Yeah, and with the success that Mitchell has had, again, they won that first game, and then the next day they Salisbury beat them pretty handily. Shut them out two games in a row. And talking with Roger Bidwell as a guest on the program, he noted that at the level that all you guys are competing at, it's depth of pitching is a huge issue, because you're playing in these tournaments that are very compressed. You're playing a number of games in a couple of days, and you got one good hurler who throws a good game, but if the depth isn't there, it shows up rather quickly.
Yeah, you get to that point, right? Like, you're in a regional. To get to that point, chances are you have 1 or 2 really good pitchers. Everybody does at that point. A lot of times those tournaments come down to who's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 pitchers are better than the others. So going back to recruiting, I said we never stop. That's why, right? Because you're not every recruiting class are you going to get the ace of your staff. But if you can get someone that upgrades that middle level of your pitching staff at the end, in May and June, that could be all the difference. So that's recruiting.
Mitchell's made a number of NCAA tournament appearances, but they haven't moved beyond that, the level, the entry level, for lack of better words.
Yep.
So they've had success, but they haven't broken the glass window yet.
Yep. It's not easy. And just to get there, obviously, isn't easy. But then, you're going up against teams like Salisbury and Eastern, and it's tough. It's not an easy road all the time.
Well, to me, it's exciting. I just enjoy watching the young folks compete, and the enthusiasm and excitement that they bring, and it just I'm looking forward to getting a chance to catch your squad, preferably in a little warmer weather. Now, and you come down to New London this year.
We're coming down to Mitchell this year.
Yeah, that'll be for 2.
Doubleheader. Probably, I think it's on a Saturday, so hopefully it's later in the year. Hopefully it's nice and sunny out there for you, and put you in a Blue Jay hat.
Well, listen, I'll wear a Blue Jay hat.
I love it.
All your games are 9 innings, correct? I mean, if it's a doubleheader, you're not playing 2 7s.
Every single one. I love it. I'm a traditionalist. I might be a younger guy, but in every area, I always joke I'm like a 55-year-old at heart.
I wish I was a 55-year-old.
I like old school baseball. So 7 innings is not baseball. 9 innings are. So I love that we do that in GNAC. Every game on our schedule this year was a 9-inning game, which is pretty cool.
How do you handle the academic aspects of things? If you're traveling to Norwich, let's say, that's up in northern Vermont.
Yep.
Would that be during the week or a weekend, or you don't know until the schedule is posted?
So last year we went up there. We got lucky. It was on a Sunday, so we drove up on Saturday night, stayed over, and then came back Sunday. They didn't miss any class for it. This year Norwich comes to us on a Tuesday, so I don't know how they're going to manage that, but we're lucky. We have 2 assistant athletic directors. Their title is Student Athlete Success. So, they work. Obviously, we have the tutoring and the counselors on campus that work with all the students, but we have, Abby and Allie and Drew that work with just our student athletes. So they're really good at helping guys with managing class schedules, and if they need extra help, they need a tutor, they need some extra study hall hours. They're really supportive of our student athletes. So they don't travel on the road with us, but there's a lot of support and kind of set up for them. All of our trips, other than Norwich, it's a day trip. So you're leaving early afternoon and you come back late at night. So they're losing some sleep. If they have an 8 o'clock class the next morning, but we're not staying over. We're not missing a lot of class. Even our Florida trip, we leave the Saturday that spring break starts, and we come back the following Saturday, so they're not missing any class for that either. So we schedule the best we can. I'll leave pitchers home too. So if we have a game on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and our starting pitcher throws 100 pitches on Tuesday, and they have class on Wednesday, they're not going to travel. We'll keep them back and get them in class. So it's a juggling act, and it's really comes down to each individual. Not everything works for everybody, so just trying to kind of figure out what works for all of our guys.
Do the faculty work with athletics in general in terms of working with students? Because if they're going to be missing class, that they don't use it against them.
Yeah, so being a small school, it's good. Like everybody knows all the professors know who's on the baseball team. They know what our schedule's like. And then having Allie and Drew, they sit in on a lot of the faculty meetings, so they can kind of represent the student athletes in those settings. What we do in our program is I have a sheet where all of the guys sign. They fill out any conflicts that they're going to have between class and games, and I'll sign it. Our athletic director will sign it. They'll sign it, and they'll give it to the professor before the season starts. So everybody's on the same page on when they're leaving, what dates they're leaving, what time they have to leave. So there's really no hiccups there. Obviously with baseball, rain can change everything. So flexibility is important on their part, but we do our best to communicate across campus.
Yeah. Now, are there any specific rules, whether it be your team rules or conference rules or NCAA rules, regarding pitchers and pitch counts?
No. You can pitch anybody at any time for any number of innings. I have my own rule. So my general rule of thumb that I stick to is for every pitch you throw, you need an hour of rest. So if I'm going to use you on back-to-back days, really you got to be like 24 pitches or less. And then it kind of keeps you on your, like that normal, like the starters that are going 100 pitches, generally keeps you on that normal 5-day schedule. So if you're throwing 100 pitches, you need, 4 or 5 days of rest. That's kind of my general rule of thumb. Once you get into the tournament, end of the season, sometimes we got to break it. We got to, push some guys to their limit a little bit, but you can kind of, by that time you learn what pitchers can do that and what pitchers need that extra rest.
Yeah, I mean, yes, because the major leagues, they don't have any rules other than that. It's just the unwritten rule, where the starters in particular are going to pitch, 100, no more than 100 pitches.
Yep.
I'm going to talk old school. I remember when the pitchers would throw 150, 160 pitches.
Yep.
Complete games was a stat.
Yeah.
Now,
I was going to say, it's surprising now to even see a guy go, 100 pitches. A lot of these guys are going 80, and that's their night.
And that whether at your level you'd be adhering to those type of metrics of trying to keep your staff and your pitchers healthy and operating at top level.
Yeah, and that's why I use that hour rule. And a lot of times too at the big leagues, like it's all the analytics and the numbers, and not wanting to guys to see a lineup a second or third time, depending on what like their pitch arsenals are and stuff like that. But for me, like I got my guys that I trust, and I'm going to ride them as much as I can, and then once they're done, we'll just go to the next guy on my list, my trust list that I want to go to. Going back to the depth part of it, right? Like we'll use our depth as much as we can, but we really rely on the same 8 or so guys for the entire season. So,
well, that's interesting. I think it's important to kind of note that the norms change over the course of time, and sacrifice bunch you don't see. I don't know, again at your level, but at the professional level, it's a lost art.
For me, so. The thing that I love most about college baseball is the things like the traditional baseball, bunting, hitting and running, taking extra bases. That's a huge part of college baseball still. It's not you talk about 3 true outcomes in the MLB, like home runs, strikeouts, and walks. College baseball there's a lot of those little intricacies that used to exist in the professional game. Like, for example, the playoff game that we won, I think we scored 5 or 6 runs in an inning, and we hit 2 balls out of the infield. We were just, we took our walks, we were bunting for a hit, stealing bases, we slashed a guy in. So that's the fun part for me. My favorite part of baseball is the game management and, teaching guys how to, situational baseball and coaching it and making this in-game decisions. The chess, I guess you could call it. That's my favorite part of the game.
I get the feeling you play chess, not checkers, myself.
I played a little bit of both. My dad and I had some good chess rivalries back in the day, or checkers rivalries back in the day. But yeah, that's the nuts and bolts of it for me.
There you go. Well, unbelievably, we've run out of time, and I want to thank you for spending an hour here on City Focus. I hope to have you back again before the season starts.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And thank you so much. Folks, before we go, I just want to remind you, we've got the Kiwanis Golf Tournament coming up on September 20 over at Shinnecossett and Groton. So we need it all. There we go. We got it up on the screen. And so golfers, sponsors, volunteers, prizes, and it's all going for a good cause, and the money stays in the community. So thank you, and good night. We'll see you next week. I'll be joined by Bobby Sanchez, head football coach at New London High School. Good night.